Kia ora team, Andy here, GM Safety and Environment at Rupe Alpine Lifts. Just going to talk you through our Alert Level 3 protocols for COVID-19. And so if you just watch this video, it should explain more or less all the elements of the protocols, which by now you should either have a copy of, or if you need a copy, make sure you reach out and let us know. Sure, most companies, contractors, and people in New Zealand by now are aware of all of the requirements and risks that are associated with COVID-19. So hopefully this is not new or different to what you're already doing, but it's important for us to all work off the same run sheet, so to speak. So here we go. So our collective goal here at Rupe Alpine Lifts is essentially the same. We're here to work together towards a common goal and make sure everyone goes home safe and sound at the end of every day. So in that vein, I want people to feel comfortable to stop, think, and plan, and that's probably even more important now. Speak up if you see something that you're not sure of or not comfortable with, or can think of a new way to do something that might be better. Have fun. I think that's probably why we're all here. Personally, it is certainly why I'm here. And I guess just adding to those have always been there as goals, but on top of that, it's about RAL and its associated contractors and businesses working together to play our part in stopping the spread of the coronavirus through New Zealand currently. So playing our part into the national response, and also making sure we don't make things any worse. And also recognizing that we have each other's safety in our hands, literally, and that we need to work together to be successful. All it takes is one of us to not do it right, potentially to ruin it for the rest of us. In terms of a commitment to safe work from an RL perspective, that starts for us with people, the people, you guys, us, and our customers or our guests. The place, so that's the environment, but also the buildings and the equipment that we use. The processes we employ, so we put a priority on processes that are both safe but also efficient, and that's a work in progress. Communication, that's always a tricky thing to get right, but it's certainly important. Continual improvement, and that's about us recognizing that every day doesn't have to be perfect, and as long as we're making progress step by step each day, and we're learning from the things that didn't go so well today so that tomorrow can be even better. And we also want to make sure that our contractors and partners have appropriate COVID-19 planning in place as well, as most of you will appreciate. As I said before, it all relies, the whole response to this challenge relies on us all playing our part and being consistent. So our plan is based heavily on the construction industry guidance and being then adapted to our environment. So the construction industry was the closest that I decided to use as a base to develop our RL specific protocols, and they've been adapted to our environment. And we're on version 1 right now, as of the 30th of April. However, that could change. It most likely will change after we've experienced what it's like to work to these protocols. So as I speak to you right now, we're just working through our first week of Alert Level 3. Very live, and need to be live. So what I mean by that is live as in they're going to adapt and they're going to be improved and tweaked depending on how it all goes. So that's what they look like. As I said before, we can send them out in PDF form. They should be on a link coming to you or already with you now. And you can open them up on your phone if you need to. And I'm just sort of running through the basic principles now. They're certainly not complicated. So if you have any problems, reach out. In terms of how we've decided what to focus on, I guess that's the same as any risk in our business and an environment. It'll be the same for your business, or if you're part of RL, you'll recognize these risk register formats. COVID-19 brings a slightly new dimension to almost everything we do up there. So risk assessments are going to become, or are going to remain, still really important. They're also a really practical way for us to, I guess, assess new challenges every day. We come up to something new, right? Well, how do we do the job we were doing before COVID-19 now with that in our heads, and how do we focus on the right stuff? COVID-19 may not be the biggest risk you face, probably won't be during the day at work. So the principle of keeping it simple is as important, if not more important now than it ever was before. So risk assessments can be as simple as a conversation, a stand-up, face-to-face but safe meeting. Going to talk about meetings in a second. Outside in some fresh air to discuss, hey, what are we about to do? Has anything changed or gotten worse or become harder because of this? How are we going to manage the things that might go wrong so that we get them to go right? And that's generally the conversation. In terms of general precautions, we need everyone to play their part in managing their own hygiene. And that's about coughing, sneezing into your elbow, putting your used tissues in a bag immediately, wash your hands with soap regularly, avoid close contact with people who are unwell. Don't touch your eyes, your mouth, your face. And when you're wearing gloves, make sure you wash your hands afterwards as well, because they're not perfect. So that's the general stuff that I'm pretty sure has all been sort of drummed into us all over the last few weeks, just being a citizen living in New Zealand and on Earth right now. But obviously we want to reiterate that for the workplace setting too. A useful flowchart that I've found explains things well is what to do if you're feeling unwell. And you can follow that flowchart through to work out what your next steps might be. In essence, or in summary, if you're feeling unwell, or you have any symptoms that might even remotely be related to this virus, we're just going to ask everyone just to play on the side of caution and stay home and get help or get tested. Do the next best thing that you can do, so that we don't end up with people that might be infectious at work or in our midst. That's not to say that we're not caring for people when they're in their home bubble. Happy to do what we can to help people in that space, but we're talking about the workplace scenario today, so that's what that's about. This stuff's all pretty freely available online, but it's also in the protocols that I've mentioned already, which you should have. Prior to arriving on scene, you basically are going to be required to fill out a personal health declaration form, and that's just a Google form. It's a once-off to say, I'm fit and healthy post-lockdown, and from there you'll be linking into the Zero Harm Farm, which is a website that we use to traditionally manage contractors in and out of work sites, but in this instance, we're going to use it for everyone, RAL staff included, from CEO right down to newest recruit. Everyone needs to sign in and out every day. In order to sign into Zero Harm Farm, you have to do an induction. It's quite simple. You log in, the site is, the link should be in the invite or in the email that's been sent to you. If not, talk to your supervisor and they can get it for you really quickly. Doesn't take long, a couple of minutes, and you're through the induction, and then you can sign in and out each day when you arrive and when you leave work. So it's a multi-layered approach, and so it starts with fit and healthy people arriving at work and staying clean and cleaning things afterwards. And that's essentially, you'll see, that's the principle of what we're doing here. In terms of when you use, this is a screenshot of Zero Harm Farm. So once you've connected in, done your induction, and as you go through induction, you're asked to check off these different hazards that are in there. COVID-19 is one of them that's been put in there recently, and the controls are at the bottom there, which talk roughly. They skim over exactly what we're talking about here and what's located in these protocols that I'm talking to you now about. Again, any questions, reach out. More than happy to discuss with people over the phone if there's questions. In terms of transport, so in terms of the chronological steps of your day, getting to work, transport's going to be the next thing. So the first thing is you do this induction, you sit through this video and you confirm that you've watched it and you understand it. You're going to do your zero harm farm stuff. You're going to make sure you're fit and healthy. And then it comes to getting to work physically. And so to that end, we're going to need to manage how we ride or sit in vehicles. If you're a contracting company, how you get your people to work is down to your own protocols, really. As an RAL example, we are requiring that we only have 2 people per normal ute type vehicle or car, passenger car, and those people should be sitting diagonally separate from each other. Driver in the front, obviously in the driver's seat, and passenger in the back left seat. When you get in the vehicle, good idea to disinfect your hands. If there should be some form of sanitizer in the car. Do your hands. Make sure you're not bringing anything into the vehicle, and then away you go. For vans, it's a little bit different. I guess we're aiming to have people sitting on opposite sides of the vehicle in the back seats only, and one driver. This stuff is probably subject to change as we roll through different alert levels, and we'll reissue another one of these updates when that time comes. Obviously, we want vehicles to be, they're a high touch, high chance of transmission portal, so we want to make sure they get cleaned after every use or after every journey where someone else might be using the vehicle in between. So if it's your vehicle for the day and you're guaranteed that no one else is going to touch it, you've got the keys for the day, make sure it's clean before you jump in it. Use it for the day, clean it at the end of the day, and we're going to talk a little bit more about there's a checklist at the back end of these protocols, and we've put them out into some of the buildings that you're going to, as you enter these buildings, there'll be a cleaning guide on the wall, which will help you work out what parts to clean. But it isn't rocket science, and essentially PPE for cleaning, throw some gloves on, use some cleaning disinfectant wipes or standard Chuck's cloth type thing with some detergent spray. Wipe all of the key high touch areas: door handles, steering wheel, gear stick, seat belts, handbrake, dashboard, door handles, all that sort of stuff. And that's then disposed of. Any of those rags that you used or paper towels, dispose of them effectively. Take your gloves off, wash your hands, and you're done for the day in terms of transport. Site entry, when you enter, I've already mentioned it before, but we do need everyone to sign into Zero Harm Farm. You can do that slightly before you arrive. If you're not driving, of course, you can do it on the way up the road. And then we know that you're on site, and then we can also use that as a contact tracing database if we have a case or we have a requirement from the Ministry of Health to track when and where people went onto and off of our sites. We're basically trying to limit any non-essential visitors. So if there are salespeople or reps that need to come to site, or would like to come to site, we're not going to let them come to site unless it's purely essential. And it would be better if people could do those interactions online or remotely over the phone. Each site, both Whakapapa ski area, Two Roads ski area, and the workshops in the National Park and Awakuni townships have bathrooms with washing equipment, soaps, and sanitizers on walls. We've increased how many hand sanitizer stations there are around the place. And PPE primarily is based around gloves, but there will be some instances when masks may well be required or desired. And to that end, we're seeking, or we've got on order a big supply of masks for the RAL team. If contractors need stuff, then reach out to me in the first instance, and we'll see what we can do to help. But essentially, the same thing would go for any normal PPE for contractors, is to be provided by contractors themselves. The advice that we're using right now is that masks are not required where you can manage a 1 meter plus contact distance, or even more than that, ideally. So there are a couple of instances where we can imagine maybe dealing with an injured person as a patroller or a health and safety person, or if a coworker goes down for some reason, that might be a situation where you'd need or you'd want to use a mask if you had to get closer than that 1 meter bubble. Other than that, I think we're fine without a mask. In general, how we're going to work on site, we're breaking RAL teams into small bubbles of 2. There's an asterisk beside 2 because if there is a task that requires more people than that to be done safely or effectively, then happy to talk through that, and that should be at the discretion of the operations manager or duty manager at the ski area on the day. I have said to those guys that we will be requiring a bit of a risk assessment around that so that we can manage those extra risks with having those extra people, and maybe have a really good think about, right, if we're going to blend 2 bubbles to make 2 teams of 2 into a team of 4, that we keep those guys as the big team and don't have a whole bunch of other bubbles mixing. But it may be unavoidable at times, and that's okay if we have to.
Hey guys, so when you're working outside in your bubble, team of 2 usually, we're needing you guys to stay at least 1 meter, if not 2 meters apart from each other. Don't share your tools if you can avoid it. If you have to, think about gloves and disinfecting between users.
We want to plan our work ideally to be avoiding other bubbles of teams. So that's about not being in the same space at the same time, stagger our work somehow. You'll have to bring your own food and drink to site. There will be nothing on offer up here. There will be drinking water in the taps if you need it, and there is hot water in some of the break rooms, but essentially the smoker rooms they're not going to be stocked or supplied with coffee, Milo, tea. That's all to be brought by yourselves. We don't want any kind of Tupperware or sharing of dishes or utensils in the breaks rooms at all. And once you've used the breaks room for your lunch, that it needs to be cleaned down after every use, because someone else could go in there after you. And so in essence, it's probably more convenient and easier if you don't have to go into the smoker room. You've got a thermos, you've got your lunch, eat your lunch somewhere away from that common area, and then there's no cleaning required. But they're there if you need them, and we'll review that as we go through the next couple of weeks. And finally, just trying to minimize travel between the different sites. Tudor, Whakapapa National Park, Ohakuni. So you're sort of aiming to be at one place for the day, and that's it. And that's just to sort of minimize how much connection with different bubbles we're going to have. When it comes to cleaning, we're all going to have to get involved. It is again not rocket science. You don't have to be. There's nothing too specific about how we're cleaning surfaces, although it just needs to be thorough, and obviously the right type of cleaning agents used. So a basic detergent with some antibacterial disinfectant is fine, sufficient. We've got examples of those like D10 or R2 around the place, depending on what supplier. At Tura, it's a different cleaning supplier. Spray bottles, the white Chuck's cloth type product, which we have lots of. So you grab a new cloth, gloves on, spray down the surface, or spray the cloth, give it a good clean down, and depending on what it is you're cleaning, there'll be more or less detail required, and there'll be a little video later on in this presentation around the examples of high touch areas that we need to be cleaning. And as I said before, Appendix 4 has a detailed plan, and we've tried to print and laminate those to put them in the workplace so that you don't have to refer to your digital copy if you have any questions or you can't remember what elements need to be cleaned when. All right. Site visitors, as I mentioned before, we just want to minimize any non-essential visitors. All visitors will be required to follow all the same processes as the workers, and we will need them to stay at least 2 meters away from anyone. We don't want them touching anything that they don't need to, And ideally, we nominate one person to deal with key visitors, and there may be requirements to have inspections on projects, things like that. So that's an example where we would probably want to have that visitor nominated, and then run them through this process, and then they become almost like a contractor. But we don't expect lots of random spontaneous visitors in the alert level 3 period. For deliveries, again, deliveries are primarily going to be down in the village at Whakapapa Village for the Whakapapa case, and the Ohakuni workshop in the Tura example. It would be great if we could think about maybe reducing or nominating one key person to deal with deliveries. And again, the deliveries need to be dealt with just like you've been bringing groceries or anything outside of your bubble into your home over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Treat everything as if it's contaminated. Give it a disinfectant spray and wipe down, and minimize any handling of paperwork or anything like that from delivery drivers, and speed their processing through our property and see them on their way. All right. And then everyone else in the workplace can then have comfort that anything that's come in through that delivery portal has been disinfected, or it's still yet to be done, and it's in a clearly labeled stack. Finally, when we're leaving the site, I think this is probably one of our key risks in terms of how we affect our own personal bubbles. We go to work for the day in our work bubbles. We might have some interactions with other people through the day, but when we come home, it's really important that we break that chain again, that chain of transmission. So, of course, you're going to do your zero harm farm log out before you leave or as you leave. Wash your hands, do a final clean hand sanitizer before you leave the site. And again, once you get into a vehicle to come home, I know it sounds like it's over the top, but every time you do it, you're just giving yourself another layer of protection for that transmission chain. And then in terms of arriving at home, there's quite a neat little guide there that I stole from another source, which basically in a illustrative way just talks about the different things, and the key thing is thinking about your phone. Your phone has been with you all day, you've probably been using it even with gloves on. To me, that's one of our high risk tools that you might end up bringing home into your house. So don't do it if you don't have to, but if it's your personal phone, think about disinfecting that. Think about your boots, your overalls or your clothes you've been wearing. Keep them separate, ideally outside of the house or washed immediately. Have a shower, then you're clean. You come into the house and you're not bringing unnecessary risk from the workplace at home. In terms of if we have a case that turns up at work, we do need to have a plan for how that's going to work or how that's going to unfold. And it will start with isolating that person, informing the relevant authorities, thinking about a transport plan to get that person where they need to go. So it could be to the hospital or to a medical center or home. We'll then need to do a big clean of the place and where that person was working and possibly even further afield. We'll need to be doing our contact tracing and understand who might have come in contact with that person. And it's quite likely that if we do get a case, the workplace will be shut for a period of time whilst the contact tracing and various testing can be done. So we are definitely trying for prevention rather than dealing with this method, but it's there if we need it. And to that end, it would be really useful if everyone kept a record in some form, could be on your phone or in a diary, a paper diary, or however you want, a record of who you talked to throughout the day, who you interacted with that came close to your bubble. So maybe not right inside your bubble, but certainly anyone that comes up against your bubble, log that down, name, so that if we have to go back and work out who might be a contact for you or you might be for them, it'll be there for you. So apart from that, there are more details in the protocols, but I think it was just important that we ran over those basics. And if there are any questions, reach out to your supervisor, manager, team leader, or me. And stay safe, have fun. It's an awesome place, and we're going to get through this. Cheers, guys.